Today I'm going to show you a great recipe for homemade Twix cookies. As you can see, they aren't fully dipped like the original Twix, but I guarantee they taste just as good, if not better. So with this recipe, it uses a 9x9 pan, which is a good sized pan to have around. It would be great for brownies, cornbread, cakes, key lime bars, so if you don't have one, consider picking one up. I have some parchment paper here to make it easy to release from the pan when they're done. Also going to use a little cooking spray. So let's start making the cookie part of the Twix. In a stand mixer or a large bowl with some beaters, we'll first mix together butter, and good butter. High quality ingredients when baking usually pays off. So this is Kerrygold brand, not a sponsor. Granulated sugar, a pinch of kosher salt, baking powder. By the way, all the measurements will be at the end of the video. Vanilla extract. Again, I recommend the high quality stuff, no imitation vanilla. So cream the butter and the ingredients really well here before we move on to the flour. And you can let this go for a few minutes if needed. Slowly add in that flour, a little bit at a time. You don't want to make a mess. It doesn't need to fully incorporate before adding more, but just a little bit at a time. You don't want to add it all at once. So with a spatula, scrape down the sides of the bowl really good. It's going to be a very crumbly dough, by the way. It won't come together as a ball of dough. It won't be very smooth. So if you're thinking, wait, did I screw this up? It's all good. You didn't. It kind of looks like big crumbs, right? Compact this into the pan. It'll come together. You want to press it really good and spend some time with this step too. Make sure to get into the corners really well. Then you have the bottom layer of the Twix cookies. Last step before putting it in the oven is just taking a fork and poking around, making holes. We're going to bake this and move right on to the next step, which is the caramel. So while the cookie crust is baking, we want to move right to this next step because this caramel needs to be all melted, needs to be hot, and the crust also needs to be warm. So we kind of want to time it out so the caramel's done and the crust is done. First step is some egg yolks and heavy cream mixed together, and we'll set that aside. On the stove top in a saucepan, half and half and caramels get added, and you're looking for a medium-low heat. And then slowly pour in condensed milk. Make sure not to do it too fast, as if you had a choice, right? So now we just let the caramels melt. You want to stir it quite frequently. Be careful too, because when this stuff gets hot, it will burn you. So handle with care. Just keep stirring, keep going. It might not look like it's doing anything, but it's slowly melting. You can tell because it's starting to get darker and darker the more it melts. Just keep stirring. Actually, a whisk would be great to use here too. I ended up switching to a whisk. Eventually, it'll be super smooth, no more chunks. And once that happens, remove it from the heat. You can see next to the caramel there, the cookie layer should be done by this point. And this caramel sauce will get the last step added, that egg and heavy cream mixture. And remember, full recipe at the end of the video. Pour it right over the top of the pre-baked cookie, and this will go back into the oven to cook this layer. Oh, and remember the pan is still hot, so use that oven mitt. Okay, the final step, chocolate chips, but you want to give them a good rough chop. You want them broken up. It doesn't have to be like powder or anything. You can see I have all different sizes here, but it'll just melt better. And you definitely want good quality chocolate for this. When I was testing this recipe, I used a generic brand chocolate chips, and they just did not want to melt very well. So definitely go with the good chocolate. Also, an offset spatula, best tool for this part. It's bent, so you can get in there and spread the chocolate around really easily. Okay, the caramel is set. As you can see, it's still bubbling. You don't want it that hot, but you still want it pretty hot so the chocolate melts. Make sure you get into the corners. Then once you got a good layer of chopped chocolate chips, just use the spatula just to barely drag the chocolate around. You're not pressing down. You're not pushing the chocolate into the caramel. You're just barely dragging that spatula over the top of the chocolate. You can see how well it spreads too as it melts. You want it as smooth as you can get. So after it cools completely, and I mean a few hours pass, I let it cool for an hour on the cooling rack, then put it in the fridge for about an hour, hour and a half. Basically when the chocolate is kind of set back up. it's time to remove it from the pan and cut the cookies into strips. So since we use the parchment paper in the spray, this part is super easy. Get it out the pan there, make sure there's no paper sticking to the bottom still. And then just make a cut right down the middle. A long, sharp knife that you can put a little force down into it is definitely needed. Then take that half and cut that in half. Then you can go as wide as you want with these. I'm just going for like inch wide sticks. Some might fall apart, but that's okay. That just means they need to be eaten right away, right? So just go ahead and keep chopping them up into bars. You can see the layers. They're so nice looking. And again, it's not surrounded in chocolate like the Twix candy bars, but this is so much easier to do than dipping them in chocolate and pouring chocolate over them, or however you wanted to do that part. But the taste is so amazing. I like to chop them all up, maybe put a few on the plate to enjoy right away. And you could serve these right away, but you're most likely going to make these ahead of time. Just put the rest in a Ziploc bag and store them in the freezer. That way the chocolate won't melt, from the heat of your hands, because it's not tempered, right? So you can take out a few at a time, but if you're making them for a party, just take them out of the freezer maybe like an hour before you want to serve them. So there you go, homemade Twix cookies at home. It's a must-try recipe for sure. So as promised, here's all the ingredients and the steps. Thanks for checking out this video. Hey, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. The goal is to hit 500 subscribers before the end of this year. If you try this one, make sure to come back to the comments and let me know how it went and what you thought. Thanks for watching Cooking with Chris. We'll see you next time.